it's good to realize that we have a very distorted view of pain in the Western world. Well, maybe the Western world isn't the right term anymore, since the Western world is spreading everywhere. Schumacher calls it the global megaculture, which has a good sound to it. So in the global megaculture, which is rapidly enveloping the whole planet, we see pain in a distorted way. We see pain in a distorted way because we think that we don't have to have it, or we shouldn't have to have it. We see it as with being without meaning, really. And if you were to study the cultural anthropology of pain, or whatever discipline it might be, you would find out, I think, that throughout mankind's history, we've never had this way of looking at pain before. We've always had a way of looking at pain that allows for it and has a place for it and sees it as having some kind of positive virtue, not as some mere error in the system that ideally we should be able to get rid of. If we do think of pain as being something which ideally we should get rid of and which there is no point in experiencing, then when we do experience it, as we undoubtedly will, this makes the experience of the pain very many times worse. It's meaningless pain, pain with no value in it. Of course, it's very hard when you're in pain to see that there's actually a value in the pain. And part of the experience of being in pain means we could possibly say that we don't have an appreciation that this is valuable, but at the same time we can have a bigger view of the pain, so that maybe not always right at the time, but we still do have a bigger viewpoint that's there somewhere. That pain isn't something which ideally should be eradicated or shouldn't be there at all, but that it's a necessary part of life and that it serves a function. This was very well known. It was much better known in the past. Aeschylus talks about wisdom coming through the awful grace of God in a painful way. The implication being that it's against our will that we learn, that we gain wisdom. But nevertheless, we're glad that we do, no matter how frightening or grueling that may be at the time. Of course, we're glad to gain wisdom. It's only when we have wisdom that we realize it's good to have wisdom. When we're ignorant and foolish, we don't realize what an onerous burden it is to be ignorant and foolish. When we're ignorant, we're too ignorant to know that ignorance is a curse. We just want to be left alone to carry on with our ignorance in an uninterrupted way. And when pain comes along, it's kind of putting a stop to that, and we resent it deeply. What we're resenting is pain as the dawning of wisdom, or as Jung would say, consciousness. So as Jung says, there's no coming into consciousness without pain. So it's not so much no pain, no gain, as no pain, no consciousness. But when we're not conscious, we don't know that we aren't conscious, and we don't miss consciousness. And so we resent pain. We resent being compelled to be conscious. Not that we know that we're becoming conscious, but there's a process and we resent it, and it is the process of becoming conscious. So possibly we could say that the difference between being unconscious or ignorant and being a bit conscious and not quite so ignorant is that we have a little bit more respect for pain. And as much as we do understand that it has its part to play in allowing us to become ourselves, really, who we truly are, rather than continuing to exist in some fashion that is essentially unworthy of us, because to live in such a way that we're always avoiding pain, and avoiding pain is our ultimate value, that's an unworthy way to live life. It also totally eradicates the possibility of ever living life. I was going to say heroically, because you can't have it. You can't be a hero when there's no pain. So a world where pain has been eradicated is a world where the possibility of living in a heroic way has also been eradicated. And we don't even need to put it like that. Our dignity is lost. Our actual dignity as human beings is lost, were we to live in a world that has been stripped of all pain and discomfort. So, to have no dignity is, of course, another form of pain. And it corresponds to what I've been calling unconscious suffering. To have no dignity and not be aware that one has no dignity, because there's a certain dignity in knowing that you have no dignity. There's definitely dignity in that. But to have no dignity and not know that one has no dignity is unconscious suffering. And that's an inescapable consequence of our attitude in demonizing pain and applying our technological prowess in the pursuit of minimizing pain, or if we can, completely getting rid of pain. And that's very much what we're trying to do. The amount of pharmacological agents that exist for the purpose of dulling pain, dulling anxiety, taking the edge off depression, and so on, is immense. We have a huge amount of pharmaceutical agents at our fingertips. And it goes beyond pharmaceuticals. Our whole way of life is a kind of geared towards numbing us. Geared towards comfortable pursuits, wherever possible. Because we see this as the highest value in life, comfort, or the absence of pain. It's not that we thought it out that clearly. It's just our basic makeup on a very basic level is to avoid pain and to seek pleasure or comfort. So we just don't see beyond that basic level, beyond that basic motivational drive. If we did, we'd see that that basic motivational drive is not the be-all and the end-all. It's kind of like a biological thing. It's necessary in its place, but we can't use it as a philosophy of life without putting ourselves in this situation where we've created a very unhealthy and very wretched form of existence for ourselves by trying to do the opposite, by trying to make things good for ourselves. In such a world as the global megaculture takes for granted and is so good at producing, pain is meaningless, and if we happen to be suffering from chronic pain, that makes us into losers. It's something to be ashamed of. It's a failure. In older times, pain brings with it the possibility of discovering new strengths within ourselves and attaining dignity, and that corresponds to Joseph Campbell's idea of the hero's journey. There can be no hero's journey without adversity, but we've gotten rid of all adversity, which is the worst adversity of all in a way, but it's not an adversity that is helpful to us. So in a very extraordinary way, by trying, without giving much thought to it, to make things better for ourselves, we've made them a lot worse. Which is something we wouldn't think of because we think we're doing things better. We absolutely are convinced that we're doing things better than earlier generations who by definition were ignorant and foolish and superstitious, and they just weren't as sophisticated as we are. They didn't have our knowledge, supposed knowledge. Clearly they didn't know how to live life as we know how to live life with them. All the evidence of them that's around us, all the evidence of consumer culture, shopping malls, and what Illich calls the anaesthetic society. So really, if we were to take a look at the type of world that we've created for ourselves, we could quite straightforwardly and reasonably see that actually we have done this thing. We have actually created a situation for ourselves which is not good for us at all. It's good not. We couldn't have done a worse job if we'd actually tried to do a worse job. And so, out of the unacknowledged misery of this situation that we have created for ourselves and yet insist on seeing as something great, something to be proud of, new forms of misery start to arise. And that is the misery that comes about when our comfort zones cease to comfort us. So then we are pushed into this world. We're pushed into a world of pain, as the saying has it. Welcome to a world of pain. Only this time it's pain that equals shame, pain that no one values, pain that when we suffer from, everyone looks at us in this way. They're embarrassed for us. They just want to find some way to get rid of that pain again. To push it under the carpet again so we don't have to see it. And that is very much what our mental health, our approach to mental health is. We all talk very much about the importance of understanding stigma and educating so there's no more stigma about mental health or mental health conditions. And that's all fine talk. It's easy talk, it's cheap talk, it's rhetoric, politically correct rhetoric, but we are prejudiced all the same. Our whole way of looking at mental suffering is prejudiced. It's prejudiced because we don't see the value in it, because we don't see that all human greatness has emerged from mental pain. And we absolutely, not only do we not see it, we're so mentally indisposed to seeing it that you couldn't explain it to us if you tried. It just wouldn't register, it wouldn't go down. Individually, you could meet people that would get it, of course, but culturally, no way. In terms of the collective mentality or the agreed upon way of seeing things, there's absolutely no way to put that idea across. And the reason there's no way to put it across is because our whole structure of everything is based on this distorted way of seeing pain, which is a distorted way of seeing life. So when we focus on the mental health conditions and neurotic suffering, we really are going down the wrong road if we're trying to pin it on the individual or pin it on the brain when we're trying to blame the brain for malfunctioning. We really are going down the wrong road because we should be looking at ourselves and our whole culture and looking at the way in which our culture of creating a world with no risk in it, a world that's devoted to superficial comfort, ultimately, when extrapolated further and further to its conclusion, creates what could only be described as a living death. And odd though it does seem, this is where our collective human endeavour is leading us. This is what we're aiming for. But if we can understand this, and if we can clearly see that and disengage from the shame that we're feeling about our own pain and seeing that our pain is magnified so many times because of our cultural way of looking at it, then this is immensely helpful. Okay, thanks for watching.